Hey all, welcome to the Slayer Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Ayer, owner of Slayer Duck Calls, a company founded on family heritage, unrivaled quality craftsmanship, and an uncontrollable obsession for hunting. Let's get to it. So today we're here with Allie Doran with Allie's Kitchen, Miss Allie's Kitchen, and welcome to the Slayer Podcast. So Allie, hello, how you doing?
Good. How are you, Bill? Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you, and it's great to have you as a Slayer chef and giving us these wonderful recipes to cook up our wild game. So I was going to do an introduction for you, Allie, but maybe you can do that for us. You know, who is Allie Doran and Miss Allie's Kitchen, and maybe you can give us a little on that, a little background.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've been really excited to be contributing to Slayer with some recipes. It's been really fun these last few months. But like you said, I'm Allie Doran. My brand and company is called Miss Allie's Kitchen. Miss Allie's Kitchen is a website, resource, and social media. And I focus on recipes, specifically wild game and sort of outdoor and really passionate lifestyle topics, encouraging people to get outside, do what they love. And I'm also a cookbook author. I have a venison cookbook. It's called Venison Every Day. And I'm also a mom and wife. My husband is an avid outdoorsman. And yeah, that's kind of the whole deal about me. We live in kind of eastern central Pennsylvania. So a lot of outdoor country to explore here. We live in a really small town.
Yep. Lots of whitetail, right?
Lots of whitetail. That's what I primarily work with.
Got it. Well, that's awesome. So how did you get into the whole, your husband's an avid hunter. How did you get into, wild game recipes and going down that avenue?
Yeah, sure. So it's a little bit by accident. I kind of call myself an accidental hunter's wife, and I find that there's a lot of other, I don't necessarily want to say spouses because, it's people have just family members. Maybe it's a parent or a sibling, but they kind of find themselves in a position like I am. But I did not grow up in a household with anybody that was into the outdoors and hunting or even foraging or fishing, really. My father is an athlete. So that was kind of my upbringing. I grew up as an athlete. I'm a runner. I played soccer and I'm an equestrian. So equestrian sports and horses are my passion. So I've always had a really big appreciation for just being outdoors, being outside. I've never been afraid of getting dirty. You really can't be if you have horses. And I met my husband, Jared, 7 or 8 years. I don't really remember at this point, but he is an avid outdoorsman. He is an angler as well, but primarily his focus is whitetail deer hunting. He hunts a lot of mountain buck, public land. He's an archer. And I just found his absolute passion for hunting really, really contagious. And I thought it was really interesting. So he's actually encouraged me to pursue riding as an adult. But with his passion for being in the outdoors, he usually, knock on wood, he usually harvests every year. He hunts PA on Ohio pretty religiously and regularly. So I was always left with all like 60 pounds of fresh meat in our freezer. And especially when we lived in an apartment, it took up a lot of space. And I am really big on not loving food waste. I am an animal lover, as I find a lot of outdoors men and women are. So we are big on respecting the animals that he harvests. And see, we were really on a budget in those early days. So we had all of this, quote unquote, free protein in our freezer. So I had a food blog at the time. I was really focused on healthy recipes, healthy baking, and I was just really unable to kind of find a voice in all the noise of all of the other healthy food bloggers because there's a lot of really talented people out there. And I was posting these recipes, paleo recipes, Whole30 recipes, even recipes without meat. And I felt like I was like closet eating venison, like didn't want to talk about it on social media because I was afraid people would, come at me. And I started really enjoying working with venison after a year or two and like really getting the hang of it. And I finally got the courage to publish a couple recipes on the blog, didn't talk about it on social media, put a couple pins out on Pinterest, and then the stuff started going viral. So I remember being at a conference, it'll be about 4 years ago now. And I said, well, I have this thing that whenever I talk about it, people kind of like go crazy, but I'm really nervous about it. And I was like, I actually cook with wild game, and everybody was surprised. And it was like, this is your thing. This is your topic. So I got really passionate about, talking with other people that were like myself. They didn't grow up eating wild game. They grew up getting all of their meat and all of their food from the grocery store. They were used to like browsing the aisles of Whole Foods for fun. And while I still do that, now I would say in the summer, about 80% or more of our diet comes from foods that are locally grown or killed, which is
Awesome.
really, really cool. It's been really, really fun just to really get focused on where our food comes from, how it's being handled, the ethics behind things. And now I have a cookbook with all venison recipes, and I've been able to connect with a lot of people and who I just feel like are similar. There's definitely, I feel like, this kind of weird space where there's a lot of resources for hunters for like, preparing what they kill right away. There's a lot of recipes written by chefs that are absolutely wonderful. I personally enjoy them, but I'm also a professional recipe developer. So I think that sometimes, a mom in Wisconsin with 3 kids at home who's trying to cook dinner on Tuesday, but she's also got, 50 pounds of not fresh, but frozen meat in the freezer. She doesn't have time to go like source juniper berries and brine something for 24
Yeah.
hours and make it. She needs a 30-minute meal that can feed a family of 5 and do so with something that even little mouths and little taste buds find pleasing. So that's kind of my background, a little bit lengthy and long-winded,
Yeah.
but there we are.
No, it's awesome, and I think it talks to a lot of us. And there's a couple things that you said. Me being an avid hunter, waterfowl, elk, deer, and so forth, and also do a lot of fishing. And so one of our challenges is a lot of big game or wild game recipes have been passed down through word of mouth, right? Like my
Yeah.
dad would cook it one way, and then my mom would take it and she would do some stuff to it. And there's really never been a good resource to find interesting and good recipes and actual ways of cooking this stuff. That because at Slayer, what we want to do is give the us hunters a total journey, right? From
Right.
helping folks find the right spot to hunt, and once they get there, to be successful with the right tools and knowledge to be successful when they find that place to hunt. And then what do you do with your game once you've killed it, and then how do you enjoy it on the table once you cook it? So kind of from field to plate, what's that total journey look like? And the one thing I don't have, and why we love partnering with you, is I kind of had some recipes passed down to me, but none of them were really great recipes. And so I think there's a lot of myths out there, or actual ways to we're always like, oh, duck is so gamey, or venison can be so gamey.
Right.
And I've people have told me, oh, soak it in milk overnight, or soak it in salty water to draw out the blood and the gaminess. And so maybe you could tell us, are those myths, are those actual ways to pull out the gaminess, or is there other ways to do it that you found that really makes it much more enjoyable?
Yes. So those 2 methods, I have never soaked in milk. The reason why I think this could work is because milk has an acidic component. And what game meats need is a little bit of acid. Honestly, if you read, I have a book, it's called the Flavor Bible, and it helps me develop a lot of my recipes, and it helps me. It's kind of like a resource of like what pairs well with what. So like you'll have there's an entry of venison, and there's just like a straight up list to everything that pairs well with it. But in the forward, there are recipes from world renowned chefs. And in every recipe, no matter what the protein is, you'll see, especially if it's red meat, you'll see talk of and use of a lot of vinegars and citrus. And what happens is, obviously, restaurant chefs and private chefs, and really anyone with a lot of culinary knowledge, they work with a lot of fat. And we'll get to this in a little bit, but you need something to cut heavy flavor. So whether or not that be heaviness from fat or cream, or heavy flavor, which I think a lot of people refer to as gamey. So if you're used to store-bought meat, it's just going to be a lot more mild than something like duck or venison or elk. There's more flavor to something that is harvested wild. Um, so I think milk could work. I get a little skeeved out, and I think if you were to soak in milk, my opinion would be that I'm not big on rinsing meat, but you would need to pat whatever you had soaked in milk dry so that like the milk comes completely off, because I wouldn't want to like pan sear something and have like little weird bits of milk on it. So I've
Yeah.
never done that. I think it could work. However, I do use milk in my meatloaf, and that is really, really good. Um, Soaking in salt, that's technically a brine, and I'm always for brining large cuts of meat. You're really just adding flavor. And if you're soaking something, you are drawing out some of that blood. And if that old blood is not drawn out of a meat, which is why a lot of people are big proponents of dry aging meat when you're processing. Wow, I can't say that today. Processing. Because the more blood that you can draw out of the meat, the less irony, like tinny flavor you're going to get. So I always recommend, even if you're not soaking in milk, even if you're not brining, even if you don't even have time to marinate, that you defrost your protein. And this applies to duck, honestly, even like frozen chicken, really anything, on a paper towel. And what happens, but especially with red meats like venison and elk, moose, all the old blood is absorbed into the towel and it's no longer in your meat, and that will help with like a really clean flavor, and it'll be just much more fresh tasting. So I think that's really important. Something I'd like to add that I think is a must when you're cooking with steaks or chops, unless you're working with the tenderloin or the fish, which is inherently like just super tender and amazing, and you can cook that with just salt and pepper. I would use a marinade, but again, I would use a very acidic marinade. So my all-purpose marinade actually has red wine vinegar, or really any vinegar you want to use. Balsamic is great, and lemon. So there is fresh citrus and vinegar, and that just really brightens things up. It also helps to break down the tissue, so something's a little more tender. But I find that, those laborious tasks of, brining and soaking in milk, they're not necessarily needed. You can get away with just like an hour marinade time. You can do overnight, but if you're short on time, you don't have to go that route.
Got it. No, that's very helpful. Because sometimes I'm like, is this a myth? Am I just soaking it in here just to?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Somebody
Yeah.
told me, right? And so when you take your meat out, say elk out of the freezer, you defrost it onto a towel. Are you doing that in the refrigerator, or are you doing that on a countertop at room temperature?
I am. Yeah, in the refrigerator. However, I will say a really good tip. Again, this applies to really any protein besides sometimes duck. But this is like not once in a lifetime, but this is a only every once in a while case. But really, any protein you're cooking with, you can let it sit on the counter for about an hour before cooking and come to room temperature. What that does is it makes it a more even temperature to cook. So if you're cooking like an elk steak, you really want it to be like rare plus medium rare. You do not even want it to get to medium. But what will happen is you're not left with that like charred outside and like raw middle, because when you pull something out of the fridge cold, obviously the center of the protein is going to be even colder. So when you put it in a hot pan or on a hot grill, the outside's going to cook, but the inside's just going to warm. So especially if you're somebody that's not used to eating your protein super rare, this would be, a time where you would definitely want to let it sit to room temperature, because you're going to get that all over medium rare, and the center is going to warm more easily because it's already room temperature.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk about the cook temperature also, as far as medium rare, medium.
Yep.
For whatever reason, like as far as elk or venison, I don't mind eating that rare or medium rare. In my mind, it's just a piece of meat, right? And I I
Right.
learned over time that if you cook it anywhere above medium rare, that it turns into leather, and
Not
that's when
good.
the
Yeah.
livery or gamey taste really comes out.
Hmm.
So I like my steaks medium rare, so that it wasn't a problem for me. For whatever reason, eating a duck at medium rare was always kind of a, I don't know why. I'm like, I don't know if I want to eat a duck at medium rare. And
Hmm.
I don't know why I have that feeling, but when I started eating duck at medium rare to rare, the taste
Oh,
was
it's
a
so good.
million times better. Yeah.
I
So is
think
there
it's
any,
because, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Continue.
no, I was just going to say, is there any thoughts on that or why you think that that's the case?
So my thoughts are a little tough love with that, and I would do what you did. I would just get used to eating your duck at rare or medium rare. Unfortunately, just because I think it can be ruined if it's overcooked, and I think that's why people like say, "Oh, I don't really like duck. It's got that like weird heavy or like it's like really." I've heard some people say like grassy, which I'm not sure that I totally agree with that, but and then it can get really tough really quickly. So well, with duck breast, if you're doing duck leg, you can braise that low and slow, and that will become fall apart tender, and it will, you know, be cooked all the way through. But if you're doing duck breast, you really want that that rare to medium rare. And my opinion on that is that it's the way it needs to be cooked. And some people don't like. My mom is still not somebody that loves eating meat under medium, and she slowly when she comes to my house, like when I cook wild game for her, I will not. If I'm cooking her a beef steak, I'll cook it to medium for her. If I'm doing any sort of game, the other night they came over and we were actually working on recipes for you guys. And she had her duck breast at a true, like perfect rare plus medium rare. And she loved it. So I would encourage people to just get used to it. So what I'm doing, I usually like to pull my red meats, so my elk or venison, if I'm working with it, at around, I know it's controversial, but 115 to 120. And then you
Yeah.
have to let it rest for at least like 10, if you can, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I usually pull my duck at like 120,
Yeah.
but no more because it's going to raise in like 3 to 5 degrees in temperature after you pull it. So you don't want it to like pull, like you don't want to wait until like 130 and then it's going to get to 135, which is about medium. And
Yeah.
it's not going to be good. So that's my opinion. It's a little bit tough love, just start getting used to it. But I think you're going to be so surprised if you really can get that, just get used to that
Yeah.
look. And I think the reason people are turned off by it is because it's technically, well, it's waterfowl, but it looks more like chicken. And obviously, chicken is not food safe to eat like that. So I think
Yeah.
that's why we're kind of like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be
I
doing
know.
this, but it's fine.
Yeah. I bit the bullet. I just pan seared some duck breasts and put it over some
Yeah,
wild rice with the sweet sauce.
that's so good.
And I did it at, rare to medium rare. And I was like, oh, this is the best duck I've ever had in my life. Like, wow.
Right? And it's so easy and it's fast. That's
Yeah.
what's great about it. It's so fast.
Yeah. So with that, what would you suggest, cooking your waterfowl with? Because, not so much with venison, most hunters, they love venison and elk and all that. I don't hear
Hmm.
too much of people like, oh, it's too gamey. But with waterfowl, I hear a lot of people, oh, I just make, jerky sticks with my waterfowl.
Oh, okay.
I just don't like eating it any other way. But again, I think A, they're overcooking it. B, they're not preparing it
Yeah,
correctly. And then C, I think if you pair it with a good sauce and some sides, it really makes a huge difference and you could really enjoy the meal. Is
I
there any
agree.
suggestions there?
So suggestions there, I would kind of continue with what we were talking about earlier about like bright acidic flavors, but duck especially pairs really well. Well, one of the classic recipes is duck de l'orange. However, my French is terrible, but orange duck basically. So anything that is like lemon, orange, citrusy. I even have that duck taco recipe on your website, which has like segmented
Awesome.
oranges in it and some lime juice. So, like, if you think like bright and like airy flavors, that is great. But pan sauces are great. I don't even think you need to go like so far as to make a whole separate sauce if you're whipping up something quickly. I know when I break down the duck, I do save all of the fat. I render it down quickly while I'm breaking all the cuts down into whatever I want them to be. And so I do have duck fat usually on hand now, which is awesome. Really, all you need to do at the end is once you're almost finished cooking, or even after you're like slicing it, put a little bit of duck fat on top and salt and pepper, and that's like so juicy and delicious. But I do think it also pairs well with like blackberries. Berries are really great. We do that blackberry sauce. It's a blackberry bourbon sauce. So, but honestly, I serve duck breast to my daughter a lot. She's one. She loves it. She obviously can't have the bourbon sauce. So I usually serve it to her with like oranges, maybe some bread. Again, some rice is really good. I've done mashed potatoes. I've done the one recipe is like a parsnip puree. So that works really well for that. But I would just say to wake things up, like you don't have to get crazy with a super complicated sauce. You could just melt a little bit of duck fat that you've used from the pan or from the fridge and a squeeze of lemon or orange, and you're really good to go. But yeah, I honestly think though that like if people like chicken, if they can just get used to cooking duck well, like I would use it in place of not in place of chicken and chicken recipes because you can't cook it the same, but instead of cooking a chicken breast, try a duck breast with what you would normally serve your sides with. So if you do like green beans and mashed potatoes and chicken breast, do a duck breast instead, but just make sure you're cooking it to like medium rare.
Yep. Cool. Now that's awesome. And maybe you could tell us how to make a blackberry sauce, bourbon sauce.
Oh yeah. So this is super easy. What I generally do when I'm making pan sauces is I start with a little bit of, I usually like garlic or shallot and a little bit of olive oil. I get them sauteing and then I deglaze the pan with some acid. And then here I'm using bourbon. If you wanted to use like red wine, that would be great too. If you don't like using alcohol, a little bit of stock. So duck stock would be good, vegetable stock. You just need a little bit of liquid, and then you want to add your berries. So in the blackberry sauce, I do blackberries. I have a recipe in my cookbook that goes really well with venison. It's a blueberry balsamic. So it's similar to the blackberry, but it's using balsamic and blueberries. This is using bourbon and blackberries. But you just kind of simmer it down on the stove. You don't have to do much besides kind of like mix it up and mash up the berries. After about 10 or 15 minutes, it gets thick enough that it could just be poured over whatever protein. And it's really easy. It keeps in the fridge for like maybe 5 days. So if you're having a dinner party or people over, you could make that ahead of time. I would not make your protein ahead of time. Yep. I would definitely serve duck and like seared venison, like venison steaks fresh. But yeah, it's easy to do. And I think it makes it a little bit more fun.
That sounds awesome. I want to go grab some duck breast out of my fridge and eat it.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah. I don't know why the blackberry bourbon reduction, sauce to me just sounds amazing over some wild rice and some veggies.
Yeah, that's how you can do it. That's all you need. I think that is where the like disconnect is with the game eating after harvest is I felt like in the beginning, like I kept feeling like I was doing it wrong because it wasn't complicated.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, if I could tell something to anybody who didn't know what to do with the meat in their freezer, cook how you like and just learn how to work with the proteins appropriately. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be a restaurant chef. You don't have to be somebody that spends, so many hours and hours and hours in the outdoors traveling the globe on big hunts to be somebody that can make a good meal of wild game. It's your taste, it's your preferences. Nothing's wrong if you like it.
Yeah. So that brings up another point. You say, cook like, cook the way you like, right? And a lot of us are barbecuers. I probably barbecue, I don't know, 5 days a week. Even in the wintertime, I'm out there. I barbecue
that's awesome.
all of our meat. One way or another, I'm just constantly out there. I think a lot of hunters like to barbecue their, have a beer and, with their buddies, barbecue and eat their wild game that they harvested, that day or that week or whatever. So any tips or suggestions on barbecuing?
So yes, but it's really funny. We all have our different styles. My husband and my father-in-law are barbecuers. My strength is in like weeknight meals. I'm a very classically like French, acclimate, I guess, prone
Yeah.
cook where I don't like a lot of gadgets. I like, out of necessity, I have an Instant Pot and an air fryer. I don't use them. I could get by with a really good cast iron skillet, a really sharp knife, and a cutting board, and a stove. Like I would be a happy girl, and a good oven. But that being said, we have a Traeger, and we had a gas grill. We don't really use it anymore. So I am a big advocate actually for pellet grills when it comes to game because you can control the temperature. So that's really nice. I don't know if I feel like a lot of people have Traeger or pellet style grills these days. I have a couple recipes on my site. A really popular one is for smoked tenderloin. What I like about those types of grills is you can still crank them up to really high heat. So what I actually do is sear and then I drop the heat down low and I smoke for just a little bit. So I sear until it's just like literally warmed and seared on the outside. It's nowhere near cooked in the middle.
Got it.
And this is best done with like maybe a marinated back strap, honestly, something that's a little bit thicker, or a really thick tenderloin. So maybe something from like an elk or a larger deer, maybe
Yeah.
not like a smaller doe or something like that. So that's going to stand up a little bit. And then I like to let the smoke kiss it. That's really, really nice. And I do a traditional marinade there. Um, I also so I actually prefer my ribs. I have not had great luck with venison ribs. I prefer to do short ribs braised. But you could totally braise so braising is just cooking low and slow and a little bit of liquid. So you could totally braise in a smoker, and what you'll get is a really, really great smoky flavor, but a lot of tenderness and juice. So what I would do there is like get a foil pan, put maybe a tougher cut like ribs or something, give them a sear on a hot grill, turn the temperature way down somewhere like around the 300s is usually good. If you want 285 and put a little liquid in your foil pan and just let it go for like 3-4 hours, you'll probably have a really tender fall apart piece of meat. And you could do barbecue sauce. You could do a traditional braise, which is usually with some like red wine liquid, and some tomato paste, which is what I'm partial to. I do really love French style, traditional classic French preparation. But those would be my tips there. So use it really low and slow. You can totally braise even in like a foil pan if you're a big barbecuer. You can use your favorite barbecue sauce, maybe some other liquid like beer would be good, beer or barbecue sauce to braise in. Um, that would be really good.
Got it.
I'm
Well,
getting
very
some
good.
ideas.
I think the moral of the story, that the things I'm hearing consistently throughout this conversation is, make sure you don't overcook your meat. Keep it to rare, medium rare. Use acidic sauces, marinades, whatever you do, keep it acidic, and
Yep.
don't get too complicated. You don't have to get too
Yeah.
fancy to really enjoy what you're
No.
cooking. So,
No. And everything doesn't have to be super heavy. Like, I mean, I love chili. We all love a good slice of meatloaf and roast, but there's also a lot you can do with it. In my book, I've got like an Asian chop salad. We've got some lighter, brighter soups. It doesn't have to be just the traditional. So you can make it work for you and what your family likes to eat.
got it. Well, we're super happy to have you as a part of the Slayer family. We always like to see your monthly recipes come out. The tacos, I can't wait to try those. That's going to be my first one, and then we'll move on from there. But it's been great having you, and thank you so much for posting your recipes and focusing on waterfowl a bit. It's been great.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's been a really fun few months.
And I haven't. Is your book published already? Is it out for purchase?
Yep.
Or?
Yep. So we're out. We published last September, and I am telling people go ahead and order now. Last year we sold out. We published in September, sold out all copies by the first week in December. I am hoping that does not happen again. My publisher has been warned. But it's called Venison Every Day. It's available Amazon, wherever books are sold, and we are in Cabela's and Bass Pro now.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, that was really, really fun. But we're doing a little mini relaunch. So anybody wants to buy the book now, I'm doing a bunch of fun giveaways. I think we're doing a giveaway together next week. Got a bunch of fun giveaways this month. I have some just nice things planned for people who already have the book, especially those that have left reviews. And on the book concepts, I do actually hold some virtual cooking classes. I have one coming up next week, so October 6th. I'm not sure when this episode will be out, and then some others later in the month and in November. So that's kind of what we've got going on in Miss Kelly's kitchen this fall. But the book Venison Every Day is out.
Venison Every Day, cool. Just so you know, I'm a terrible instruction follower. I'm the guy who opens a kid's toy and throw the instructions to the side and just try to build it for 2 hours. But you know what? I have my mom's recipe book, and she was an awesome cook and chef.
Oh, that's awesome.
But what I do is I usually glance over it. It gives me some inspiration and direction, and then I kind of it gets me 70% of the way there, and then I throw my own little flair into it. So I'll definitely be picking your book up so that I have different ideas and avenues to go down to cook this stuff.
Well, awesome. Thank you.
Cool.
I appreciate it. Yeah, that's what it's there for.
Yeah. Thanks, Allie. We really appreciate it. And
sure.
Wonderful day. And thanks for being part of the Slayer family.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll see you.
Bye-bye.